and usually it's based on a sikha from the Rebbe, or something like that, and then we discuss our own enlightenment. Try to ultimately, as I point out, we try to ultimately apply it to ourselves. Understand where we come into this. So, as you all know, this Pasha is Pasha's Lech Lecha. In general, Pasha's Lech Lecha you saw in the Hayom Yom, where he says Pasha's Lech Lecha is a very pleasant Pasha. We had in Breshis, we had the end, the beginning of Breshis is whatever the beginning, but then it ended up with negativity in Pasha and Lech Lecha, in Noach, there was a flood. Towards the end of Noach, Avram was born. Lech Lecha is fully saturated with Avram. From the beginning, Hashem told him to leave, and he went, and all the way to the point of Bris Milah, as you're going to see. It's a very enlightening, encouraging parsha. The Rebbe points out an important principle in general, and particularly in terms of the names of parshiyos. In general, we have to know that the impetus, the starting point of something, that represents and ultimately follows through in everything that happens after. And in the Parshas, the beginning of the Parsha and the name of the Parsha is representative of the principles of the Parsha. Thus, the Parsha's Lech Lecha is representative of everything that occurs in Parsha's Lech Lecha. So we'll come back to this Sikha. Before that, I just want to discuss the principle of halicha, of walking. You know that the human being, one of the titles, that the special titles that the human being has, is that he is a mahalech. A mahalech means that he is literally a walker. What does this mean, he's a walker? All animals walk. The principle that he is a walker means that he moves constantly from one stage to another stage. He's not walking in circles and remaining in the same place. Walking means that he moves from one stage to another stage to another stage. And pardon me, the function of walking is accomplished in the following way. But I'm going to discuss, the point is that the fact that he is called a walker is not just a mover, but a walker. Walking has a specific method to its movement. And what is the method of walking? There are other means where there's a way to, you can jump across, you can run across. Walking has a specific quality to it, specific nature. What is the nature of walking? That when you are standing in one place, and you want to make a step, you move one leg first, and the other leg remains in the original place. And then you move the other leg to join the first leg. That's the art of walking. Jumping, both feet are off the ground. In running, also in a certain sense, both feet are off the ground. In walking, both feet are never off the ground together. It's one foot at a time. What does this mean? How do we interpret it practically? That since I want to make a step, first I put my one foot out. And I want to get acclimated. Acclimated? Feel comfortable in this new place where I'm putting my foot onto. And then when I feel acclimated and I feel I belong there, I move the other foot, and that's when I conclude my step. Then I start the next step. Very important principle. To discuss this principle, when a person makes a step, he already decided where he wants to go. So why does he have to go step by step? He knows what he wants to do. He already decided. He says, I want to go there. He goes there. Why does it need to be this kind of a methodology, step by step? I have to get acclimated and so forth. The reason for that is we must understand that a human being is much deeper than that which he perceives in his thought. Even when he makes a decision. Very briefly, we learn about this, we discuss it, but very briefly, I don't want to go very deeply into this, it's not the place. We know that a person has 10 koiches. You learned this many times. 10 koiches. Coming from the 10 spheres. 3 koiches that are called intellectual koiches. Chochmah, Bina, V'das. Then below that there are 7 koiches that's called emotive, emotional, midos. And then he has 3 executive koiches, which is called machshava, thought, speech, and deed. Just as a person cannot speak unless he thinks, there's no way a person can speak without having previously thought of what he's going to say. A person cannot think but of something that he feels. A person cannot feel but of something that he is aware of intellectually. We have to know beyond that. A person cannot understand intellectually, but something that he can relate on a higher level, which is called rotzin, the will of the nefesh, which is beyond the intellect, which is the reality of his life. In other words, the real person, the real motivation behind all these activities, including his seichel, including his intellect. The intellect is already an awareness, an interpretation of what his soul wants. You've heard it said many times, I'm sure, that really the basis of the intellect is what's called emunah. Emunah, what's emunah?
Faith.
Faith. Now, let's focus in on that. You're talking about intellect. Intellect means that I understand. Understanding means I have proof, arguments, counter-arguments. All of a sudden, faith. Faith means that there's no arguments, no counter-arguments. This is what I believe. So what kind of intellect is that? How intellectual is faith? In some circles in the world, they call faith blind faith. And we reject that. It says faith is not blind. Faith is very bright. But how so? What's the brightness of the faith? How is faith to be given the title of being the source of intellect? And the answer and explanation is very important to understand. That above and beyond and the basis of all of our capabilities, of all our talents, all our functioning talents, including the intellect, is the nefesh, is the soul. The soul inherently is a godly soul, and it really knows what's good and what's bad. Particularly, it knows goodness. It doesn't even know badness. Badness is introduced over here to it. The Shonitzo doesn't know badness. It knows only godliness. So this faith element is something which is extremely real. It's not, God forbid, to say blind faith. This is the brightest thing that we have. This is where we see things very clearly and very real. This is the godly element in the human being, in us.
Sorry, you said it's hard for a person to relate to the Ratzon, or they can't relate to the Ratzon? Before, no. A person relating to your Ratzon.
No.
Is something we can relate to?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yeah, we can relate to the Ratzon, but it's beyond the intellect.
Through Amunah?
Through Amunah.
Okay.
Amunah is sourced in the Ratzon.
Amunah is a source for Ratzon?
No, sourced. It's sourced in Ratzon. Ratzon is higher than Amunah. You can ask me. What is it? Will. Chachenia.
Okay.
Having said that, can you draw the curtain? Thank you. That's it.
Yeah, I was worried. I've just had
Having said that, I'm going to kind of reiterate something that I mention all the time. And the reason it's mentioned all the time is because it's imperative that we keep focus and consciousness of this reality. And I want to introduce this in very simple terms. There is a big world. And God created the world. I created the world in 5.5 days. You know that. You learned it in 5.5 days. And the first half of the 6th day, the world was actually completed with all the animals, vegetation, fowl, fish, earth, sky, and sun and moon, everything, and the stars, everything was completed. And then there was a world. Everything was going on. What was it missing?
Us?
Humans? The human beings. Only the human beings. And I always ask the question, what did the world stand for at that point, when there is everything but the human being? What do you guys think? I asked the question many times so you all know what I expect, right?
Nothing.
What is that? I don't understand the question. What does the world stand for?
What is the value of the world? What is the world about? So as I said, we already discussed it many times, so at this point it's a rhetorical question. We all, when you reflect, realize that at that point the world without the human is absolutely nothing. Has absolutely sense not for nothing. It's just a cycle of cause and effects, of wanting and rejecting, being hungry and satisfying the hunger, being hungry, satisfying the hunger. That's all it is. And then the human being came, and the Rebbe says, "Naso the B'tzalminikid Museino." The human being came, and that changed the entire panorama. It gave the world a real presence, a real meaning. And when we realize that it's the human being that changed the entire perspective of the world, even though the human being too has to eat, sleep, and he has other bodily requirements, and superficially you can get confused. You can say, what is the big difference? He has his needs, and the animals will have their needs. What is the principal difference? The principal difference is that the human being relates to God directly. God is his center of his life, the center of his thought. This is the difference. He has a neshama. What is the principle of a neshama? So the Torah describes what's a neshama. It says that all the animals were created. You learn this, and all the animals were created. They came out of the ground alive. Body and soul, so to speak, and life force came out together. So this life force that's in the animal does not have an independent presence. Its presence is only to give life to the body. The human being was created differently. His body was first formed from earth, and then God blew into his nostrils a breath of life. This breath of life gives life to the body, but that's a very subset, a very low level of its functionality. Its real functionality is to give him a perception of truth. He knows the truth not by researching the earth, but by knowing what the neshama tells him. This is what we're saying, that a human being has a nefesh and has a rotzin. This rotzin cannot be swayed that easily by experience and by testing. It has to agree with what you are giving it. That is the real person. When we say a person can come into an environment, he decided he wants to be here. It'll take him quite a while to adjust and to acclimate. What is the adjustment and acclimation process accomplish? That his very essence, this rotzin, recognizes and can relate to this new environment. And that cannot be forced upon him intellectually. You cannot explain this is good, this is bad. It doesn't work. It doesn't do anything. The explanation is good enough for him to make a decision to go and try it and get into it. But then he has to acclimate into it, to become part of it. Only then can you say that he can now move the second leg into this place. And now he belongs here. And now when he belongs here at that point, he really belongs here. He really is comfortable. That is really his stage in life right now.
So was Abraham not comfortable and needed time to acclimate? Is that the way?
I'll come back to Abraham. So far, we just introduced the concept of halicha, of walking. And the principle, again, the principle about walking is that it's not just that you move from one place to the other, but that you have moved your entire self from one place to the other. Which means your whole orientation. And then when you get to the new place, to the new stage, you are looking at a totally, you have a completely different perspective. You start a new growth. That's Halicha. In Hasidus, the terminology used, for those who are familiar, if not familiar, I translated, the terminology used for Halicha is called Halichu Shaloi Be'erech. Shaloi Be'erech means that you move. The new place is not comparable at all to the old place. It's like coming into a new world. What? And to explain this, I'm looking at a standstill watch.
This class is just so good. In
You
no
got-
time,
you got
it
buffled.
feels like we're learning so much.
You're supposed to be Mahalech, you stupid. Okay. Yeah. Just to make it even clear, there's another category called Amida. Amida, standing still. Now, Amida does not mean it stands still without any change, without any movement. Amida also has progress. But here you understand the difference, the contrast. Let us picture a person climbing upstairs. He's climbing up a ladder. The ladder is standing on the ground. And essentially, one rung is basically in the same place, just above the other. He's climbing up. With every step that he takes, he can see miles further. Right? He can see much further than he was able to see before. And he climbs 5 steps, 10 steps. You see, wow, he can see all the way down. One goes up on the Empire State Building. He says, oh, look where I am. I see the whole world. Has he moved from his place? Has he moved an iota, 1 inch? He's still in the same place. He sees all the way down. His imagination, he sees way, way back, way out. He really is standing still. This is the Pshat Amida. In other words, in his nefesh, in his rotzen, he hasn't made a move. We have this phenomenon. People are projecting. They're projecting. I want to be there. I want to be there. And yes, you are projecting that you're not moving.
Is the idea? I know this is maybe not related, but like a Schrindeltreppe, is that also a form of Amida?
Yes.
But it's different.
Yeah, but its purpose is just to go up to the next stairs, as the next story. But it's not called Halicha. Halicha means that you move literally from here to here. If you climb up on top of this building and you see 770, will you consider yourself having been in 770?
No.
Excuse me?
Maybe if you have really good binoculars.
If you had very good binoculars, have you been in 770?
No.
Feel cool.
That is the difference. So this is a physical, very mundane, very tangible illustration. And you see the difference between being someplace and just seeing it or knowing about it. So the intellect, the knowledge is sufficient to make a decision, I want to go there. It doesn't get you there. It gives you the opportunity to get there. By getting into it slowly, and the only way it can happen is getting into it slowly, because this requires a very fundamental change in a person. And that doesn't happen easily. This is why there are many instances, you may have known, but I know many instances where people, have gone to very great heights, they became Bali Tshuva and became very frum, and then all of a sudden they fall flat. I've known, nobody should know of it, Mama should, a whole family abandoned because he fell flat. I don't want this anymore. It's ridiculous. How does it happen? But he was such a wonderful person. He was all projected. He didn't bring the other foot with him. He was looking at it from the vantage point where he was originally. We have your bochrim, but you're not little children. You're all grown men, and you're not far away from marriage. In marriage, we have the same thing. In marriage, we have a bocher and a girl, and they get married. They don't realize that once you're married, you're not a bocher anymore. You're a married man. You're a responsible person. You're not a bocher. It takes time to acclimate, but you have to realize it's a different orientation. You're in a different place in life, a different world. You can't think like a bocher. A bocher, I'm going to have a blank tonight. How, I don't know, maybe to 5 o'clock in the morning. What? A bocher doesn't have to answer anybody. A married man does. He has to know that he is now carrying a heavy responsibility. There are people who never learn that. And they have to be hit hard over the head. Remember, remember where you are now in the stage of life. Okay, so this is the principle, halicha. It has to be step by step, but it has to be complete. Ultimately, it has to be complete. If you don't go to completion, it's going to gnaw at you, and ultimately, it's going to backfire. God forbid. Avram Avinu, Hashem said to him, Lech Lecha. Lech Lecha, which means you should go unto yourself. There is Chassidish explanations, what kind of expression is Lech Lecha and so forth. Rashi says, Lech Lecha means go for yourself. Lech Lecha, go for yourself, which means this which I'm telling you to go. Leave your father's home, leave your birthland, leave everything that you are accustomed to, that you're fully adjusted with, and go into a foreign land. It's for your benefit. Hashem said, I tell you it's for your benefit. But when are you going to realize that benefit? Only if you make the full step. That benefit is not going to come instantaneously. How do we know that? As soon as Abraham picked up and went, and he came to Eretz Canaan, what happened there? Anybody remember?
It was hard.
Famine.
A famine. As soon as they got there, it was a famine. They turned around, they had to go to Egypt. And when he came to Egypt, what happened? Sarah was taken away. I mean, all kinds of really scary moments. So this doesn't happen easily. And each one of these moments was a profound, what's called test nisoyin for Abraham. And one of the principles of that nisoyin, he came to Eretz Canaan, there was a famine. So he had to go down to Egypt. He had no choice. There was nothing to eat. So what was the Nisoyan about? The Nisoyan was, how is he going to react to this new situation? Is he going to say, I thought God said I'm going to have all blessing, all bliss, all goodness. Where is his promise? This was the Nisoyan. Avram never said anything like that. I have to go here. Now I'm being directed to go to Egypt. I have to go to Egypt. And so forth. Let us take this just an overview of what happened in this whole journey. Up until that time, up until Lech Lecha, it doesn't mention in the Torah, but I'm sure you learned, you know, that Avram, at that time Avram was 75 years old already, when Lech Lecha. And there's one hint in the Torah as to what his life was before. Hanefesh asher osu b'chora. You learned that? Avram went to Hanefesh asher osu b'chora. All the human beings that they created, which means that they made and they brought into a godly domain. So Avram and Sarah, there is this indicator in the Torah that Avram and Sarah were not sitting and enjoying the fruit of the land. They were busy. They were busy even way before, throughout this whole thing. And you also know about the Kibshan Ho'esh. You know that Avram was thrown into a flame. You know Adhoram was consumed by the flames. You know, Avram broke his father's idols. This is in the Medrash, but there's plenty of allusions to that in the Torah. By the time Hashem said to Avram, Lech Lecha, Avram was an enormous high madrege. What changed? What was the Lech Lecha? What was the special thing in the Lech Lecha? Special thing in the Lech Lecha was that up until now, Avram was in the land where he was born, in the land that he was accustomed. In other words, he was in a place that natural life brought him to. His parents were there, his brother was there. This is where his family was. This was his natural abode. And he did all kinds of wonderful things in this natural abode. Now Hashem said, it's time for you to dissociate from this natural abode. And you will be, the orientation, your whole orientation will be that you are where I tell you to be. Not where your natural experiences brings you to. This is the Lech Lecha. And that is something that took many years to acclimate. Avram did it, but there were many nisyonos until he reached, so to speak, the pinnacle of that, the perfection of that. Only at the end of that period, that's when Yitzchak was born. Yitzchak was born at the time when Avram was fully, so to speak, out of the nature of the world. He had the Bris Milah, it's completely different orientation. So far, have it with me? Yes?
Yitzchak was born when Avram was 75?
Avram was 75 when you left Chorah, as he said in the Torah.
Yitzchak was born when 99, right?
Yitzchak was born at 100. 99 was the Bris Milah. Okay? So the Rebbe, so far it's like an introduction, but the Rebbe explains in this sikh very interesting thing that we touched upon it already, essentially, that even though in this journey of Abraham, it wasn't always an upward journey. It was going upwards and going down. He was going towards Canaan, and he was going southward and going closer to Yerushalayim, as it says, Rashi explains. And here, he was faced with a famine and moved on to Mitzrayim, Egypt, the lowest of the low. The impurity of the world. He had to go there. He wanted to distance himself from all that. All of a sudden, boom, he had to go down all the way down. So he had all kinds of ups and downs. And it is important to understand, and this is the point in that sikh. Even though there were ups and downs, and many ups and downs, the downs are also part of the ups. Because, as we have explained here, as a person walks, he moves one leg in front of him. And during the time that one leg is still behind him and one leg in front of him, he is resolving all the doubts. Should I go or should I go? Is this really what I want and this is not really what I want? Do I feel comfortable or not feel comfortable? And during this whole process, there is ups and downs. But this whole debate, and some more moments I feel like this, some moments I think like this, these are all ups and downs. These ups and downs are all going in one direction, up. Because as we explained, the movement does not consist of just moving your legs and moving your thought. This is what I want to be. You have to take everything with you. Your whole soul, your whole orientation. And that requires this entire process. The Rebbe explains in this Sikha a very important principle. Clearly, when a person does an Aveira, Rahman Islam, it's an Aveira. An Aveira is not a mitzvah. We should never make a mistake in thinking Aveira is a mitzvah. Aveira is not a mitzvah. And he has to regret the Aveira, and he has to correct it, he has to make sure it never happens again, and so forth. This is from Shuvah and cleanse and so forth. The Aveira per se is not a mitzvah, absolutely. But the overall effect of all the things that a person experiences is under the supervision, under the divine supervision. And ultimately, everything leads upwards. Sometimes we don't see how this is. In the long term, we do find out that everything ultimately leads upwards. And this is what the Rebbe says. There is, by the way, I just want to mention, I don't know if you look at the Meforshim on the side, you probably have enough with learning Rashi. There are Meforshim, the Ramban. I'm sure you heard of the Ramban on the Chumash. Ramban is one of the foremost commentators on the Chumash. Besides that, he was a foremost commentator on everything, but in the Chumash, there's a lot of Ramban. He says, when Avraham went to Mitzrayim, there was a famine. was a farmer in Mitzrayim. It was actually was a sin. It was really a sin. And Hashem said to him, he should go to Canaan, and he doesn't have what to eat, he should rely on him. And Hashem told you to be here, you have to be here. This is the Ramban's presentation. So according to the Ramban, there was actually a chet in Avram Avinu's turning around to the mitzvah. It says in the Zohar that due to the fact that Avram went to Mitzrayim, it developed in the fact that Yidden, the whole Avram's seed, the whole nation of Avram, ultimately ended up in Mitzrayim. To, so to speak, to correct it, whatever happened there with Avram. And then there's another important thing. Sarah was taken to Paro's house. And miraculously, she was not touched. She was not in any way impurified. Which means that she withstood all the impurity of Mitzrayim under these circumstances. And as a result of this, and in merit of that, Avram had become wealthy. When Avram came out of Mitzrayim, he came out in great wealth. This was reflected later on by our people, by the Eden being in Mitzrayim. And one of the big merits that Eden had in Mitzrayim was what? To maintain family purity. They did not get involved in the atrocities of Mitzrayim. When Eden left from Mitzrayim, there was no confusion. They knew exactly who is my father, who is my mother. Totally atypical to the environment in Mitzrayim. They came out pure. They had 12 tribes. They can account for each person. That's a reflection of also what Sarah withstood over there in Paro's house. And as a result of that, they came out of Mitzrayim with great wealth. It's all a reflection of our Lord. So no matter the fact that, yes, it was a chet, but what was the result of this? What was the purpose of this? A tremendous greatness for the entire nation.
It's like doing tshuva. It's like once there was like the Avera and then there's tshuva. And through the tshuva the Avera came so like merit. Yeah, like merit. Yeah. Saying this small capsule, the idea of Avram.
It's not only the tshuva, it's the withstanding ultimately the growing within the environment, within a challenging environment. That's essentially what it is. Growing within a challenging environment. So, coming back, this is essentially the point and the sikha. And as we always say, that our point over here is to not just to discuss the sikha. You can all learn a sikha. It is to translate that and find ourselves in the sikha, in the parsha. Everything that we discussed is a reflection on each one of us. Each one, okay, you come to yeshiva. It was a decision to make come to yeshiva. Yes, I made a decision because I saw this, I saw that, I wanted this, I wanted that. That decision will not make you into a yeshiva. His decision will bring you into the building. Right? What will make you into yeshiva? Absorbing everything that you eat here. I don't mean digesting the food. I don't know if it's digestible part of it. And dealing with every difficulty that you have. And if you do have a difficulty, go for it. Try to resolve it. Try to find an answer. Try to find a resolution. I recall many years ago. At that time, we were at the Torah just first started, and there was a bocher that came to learn, a smart bocher, and I was learning something. I don't remember exactly what it was. In any case, I said something that he did not understand, he did not approve of. The next morning he wasn't there. Which means he wasn't there in the beginning to start with. He was in the building, he wasn't there. He was still outside, looking inside, and trying to see whether from my outside vantage point I can accept this. But I'm not accepting this as my place, as my reality. He didn't like something, so he well left. So I'm explaining that being in the yeshiva, coming to the yeshiva, despite the fact that you made a decision, you have to understand there's going to be moments, ups and downs. This is a good time to talk about it at the beginning of the year, even though most of you are not novices over here. There are going to be ups and downs. Sometimes you think David is sending you to Mitzrayim, sometimes he's sending you to the other side of the world, whatever it is. Coming to yeshiva essentially means coming to a place that is defined by Torah. It's not Ur-Kazdim. It's not a natural world. It's a Torah world. It's defined by Torah, defined by Chassidus. It takes time to acclimate. It's time to rise up to that level of sensitivity, of intellectual sensitivity, to be able to live like this. There's no rush. The only rush is do not fool yourselves. If you do have a question, if you do have a difficulty, that has to be resolved. It cannot be shoved under the rug. Because you have to be ultimately with both feet here, not with one foot. That's the Lech Lecha. And if we go that way, with both feet, then it is truly Lech Lecha, as Rashi says. V'tevoscho, for your benefit, for your good, v'hanooscho, for your happiness, for your well-being, for your satisfaction, for your pleasantness. That's what it all is. Everything should help, that each one of us should follow in this process. I know that you all made a decision. Now comes the hard thing. To chew up the food and digest it. It's not. Everything looks flowery when you look at it. It looks great. I remember it always remained a kind of impression in my mind. In the subway, on the trains, there were all kinds of advertisements on the subway at that time. There was a little box advertisement enticing people to become doctors. Okay. What would be an enticement for somebody to become a doctor? Can you project this? Forget about the money. They're showing a doctor in his white robe standing over a patient, and a whole slew of helpers are standing there, and they're listening to his wisdom. Okay. Now, project yourself a doctor.
Wisdom?
Huh?
Who's saying the wisdom?
The doctor is giving instructions. Okay?
Oh, wow.
Wow. Isn't that enticing? Very enticing. Now you go for 10 years to school.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
What?
It's 12, I think, for
12.
To become fully a doctor because you have an internship. Right, residency for 2 years.
And then it takes 50 years to become really a doctor.
And then you retire.
You'll be a teacher.
And then you retire.
Just as you become a
Listen, the same is true. The same is true, no less, in terms of getting to become a yeshiva. A chassidus you need. To understand chassidus and to be able to relate to chassidus in the true way, where as you're going through the path of life, nothing will turn you away, God forbid. You'll be able to follow through and find a way to go through all the difficulties, all the challenges, all the Mitzrayims and all the famines and everything that comes your way. Just yesterday, having a man who is a shliach, finding a man. I don't have to tell you, he's really finding a shliach and he's doing it. He's a very honest guy. And he, from time to time, he calls me for a little bit of encouragement. He says, I was in yeshiva. When I was in yeshiva, and I learned, it says that if you do Torah mitzvahs, you get all the good. You have no problems. Rabbi, there are problems all around me. How do I relate to that? This is very real, and this is a good guy. It takes a lifetime, really, to process all of these and to realize what is really behind, what is really the depth and the blessing of Torah mitzvahs and the blessing of Chassidus. And that's why it says, Lech Lecha, it's a long trek. You have to walk all the time. 1 foot at a time. You have to know that as much as you know and understand, there is so much depth that you haven't in you that you haven't even fathomed. You haven't even touched on. You didn't even realize it. And that is the real guy. This is the real person. This is the neshama. Got a couple of minutes. I always like to give a very down-to-earth, a simple illustration of the point. Which I use all the time. A table. We sit at a table. The table and us are two separate entities. I can sit on a table, I can sit on the couch, I can walk around, I can sit wherever, I can lay in bed. The table is something which somebody invented and put it together and say, this is the way to sit. And we tested out and said, yeah, it's pretty comfortable. I can put my cup here, I can put my watch here, I can put my hands here, I can put my head down. It serves me well. If you think about it, you will realize that really the comfort that you feel at the table is way beyond its utility. Utility means usefulness, what you use it for. You really feel comfortable sitting at the table because it's a human way to sit. A child, when you show him how to sit, he only wants to sit. Because it lends itself to the human psyche, the human nature. Sometimes we'll discuss it and I should explain it. But this is how far it goes. Even a simple thing like this. There's a nefesh element in this. How much more so is this reflected in our spiritual life, Torah mitzvahs, in living a decent life, and having avos Yisrael, concern about your friends, concern about your own respect, self-respect, as I mentioned last week. You want to know that you went through a whole revolution upstairs. Cleanliness, human quality. These are all things which are primarily human. These are not add-on things which are useful and beneficial. This is what a human being is. On a lower level, but still, this is the fundamental things. Hashem should help each one of us to be able to make a step deeper and deeper until we pull the next leg together and then start a new journey. And the next step out again. Every situation, every era in a person's life is another step. You come in, you first learn Alabez, that's an era. You learn Chumash and Rashi, that's another era. You learn Gemara, you learn Chassidus, you learn Halacha, you learn Smicha. It's a totally different era. That'll help you get married. You understand yourself, that's a different era. Each one of these needs a process, an acclimation. And it doesn't happen by itself. In each one of these you have to seek to understand. You have to seek explanation, you seek guidance. It doesn't happen by itself. Because you are not Lech Lecha, you're walking in Hashem's world. You don't know what's doing. The earth is not going to teach you how to act. You left Ukazdim a long time ago. Right? So we have to know how to live in a human life. And Hashem's help, each one of us will be successful in this and pursue it with the full power of your soul, full power of your intellect. Hashem's help, you'll be successful and be blessed.
Amen. Amen. Thank you.